returning from my sabbatical into the pandemic. Broken world thinking now. There's a crack in everything. That's how the light gets in. Leonard Cohen. I entered my sabbatical weeks after my mother's death. I returned from my sabbatical the week of pandemic lockdown. Originally, when I proposed my idea, broken world thinking was a metaphor for how we might take up incremental repairs at community colleges. Our students, our studies in resilience and repair, and so my focus would be on how to address gaps in higher ed infrastructure for access to digital humanities. But things are different now. We are all rethinking repair. My project was inspired by Stephen Jackson. In his essay, Rethinking Repair, he asks us to acknowledge the limits and fragility of the worlds we inhabit. He called upon humanists to recognize how many of the stories and orders of the last 200 years of human history are in the process of coming apart. Perhaps to be replaced by new and better stories and orders, but perhaps not. Broken world thinking, writes Jackson, asserts that the key themes and problems we face are breakdown, dissolution, and change, not innovation, development, or design. This is just a place. This is just a place we go around, distanced yearly in a star's atmosphere, turning daily into and out of direct light and slanting through the quadrant seasons. A.R. Ammons. In 2019, I considered broken world thinking almost metaphorically, and certainly I wasn't prepared when I returned in March 2020 for how broken our world might be, materially and ideologically. So reporting on my sabbatical 18 months after I completed it feels like an experience of the uncanny. In the homey before times when we breathed each other's air without suspicion or fear of COVID, sabbatical reports were a rare occasion for intellectual engagement and celebration at Lane. But that's harder this year. Yes, I did accomplish a lot on my sabbatical, and if you're interested, you can read the full report online. So much time has passed that, in fact, the book I worked on, People, Practice, Power, Digital Humanities Outside the Center, which I co-edited with Angel Nieves and Siobhan Sr., actually comes out this fall from Minnesota Press. But this sabbatical report is not like others, and that's what makes it uncanny to write it. The word uncanny combines hominess with its negation. To experience the uncanny is to feel estrangement in the ordinary, to nearly but not quite recognize something, to be haunted with uncertainty while surrounded by something familiar but not quite right. 19 months ago, I took one final trip to museums and archives in New York City, and while there was some talk in the papers of something going around in China, we were still measuring social distance by miles rather than feet. But soon that changed. Returning from New York, this is a scene of panic buying before lockdown began. The murder of George Floyd 2 months later was shocking to me, but not to so many others. The Black Lives Matter movement insisted we stop turning away from this broken world. Masking up and taking to the streets was an insistence on repair. Creatures gazed back at us last year in our new offices, puzzled by our presence at home, emboldened by the absence of traffic. Early on, we made breezy plans for using the affordances of our homes to overcome isolation, as I did here in the New York Times. And we could solve all the problems, all the problems, all the problems. No, it isn't broken. But our art in the streets expressed the haunting isolation and inadequacy of our solutionism. And we walked, and we walked, and we walked past walls and each other. And the chairs, the empty chairs, too, reminded us of meetings in person that we missed and we missed. And the pairs of the chairs everywhere punctuated the landscape, or sometimes just one chair sitting in expectation. But the flowers, though, was it an unusual season, or were we just more present? Were our senses heightened by our isolation? Walking through forests, one couldn't help but wonder what they were thinking of us now, these trees. We were the incompetent stewards of this broken world, and some trees seemed to wink at us on our walks. George Floyd could not breathe that year, and then neither could any of us. In a broken world, beyond index, there are things we live among, and to see them is to know ourselves.